And finally, sat in Chris places his place. He came by.
And I'm going to call the meeting, August 11th, EDA meeting to order. Looks like we have a quorum. Eric, could you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Bob Smith,
Yep, here.
Robert Fleet.
Here.
George Lamb,
Here.
Lawson Roberts.
Here.
Winston Bond,
Here.
Dennis Tatum, Sam Arrington.
Here. All right. Stand for invocation and pledge. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come meet and betterment of the county. Ask blessings on everyone here. Lord, we just give you praise and honor. Amen.
Amen.
Now, if we do the pledge, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
You make, first of all, I want to welcome Dexter to our meeting. Eric, did you met David?
Yes, very acquainted.
Yep. So, approve or amend the agenda. I have one item to put in the agenda. It'll be after the new business. It'll be the EDA 101 that David's here to present. Want to make sure we get it on the tape so that if anybody has to leave early, they can watch it at their leisure at home. So, and without objection, we'll put that in there. Consent agenda. The minutes. Anybody have any corrections to the minutes? I passed out the under the finance report. I passed out the LGIP statement for the Amelia County EDA. We have $784,155.56, but that's back in July 31st. We haven't closed the year yet. That's my understanding. So I think there's some bills that have been paid but didn't show up on here. So I talked to Stephanie about that the other day. She's working with Ashley on that. So. But the stuff we get from the county really doesn't have any meaning for us. We operate out of this account. And I bring that to you because later on we're going to be approving the application for the grant from the Tobacco Commission. And we have to put up some money for that. So any questions about the finance of the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Both.
I approve accepting minute.
Awesome, thank you. Second?
Second.
Who's second?
I'll go ahead. Second. You weren't here last.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Have any public comments? Dexter, you got anything, any wisdom you want to give us? No?
No, when it comes to wisdom, no.
All right. Amelia County Regional Commerce Park update. But we're gonna have Neil do that, but since we can't hear him, I'll take it.
Can you
We're moving forward with the road entrance road design. I still have a problem with understanding why that's going to take 8 months to do. You ride right up 360 and the new entrance they just put off on the north side. That's exactly what they're going to put on in an hour. So looks like to me you just flip it, you know. But it takes 8 months to do that. Then it has to be approved. What is it? It's going to be a good year, I think, before we can see anything out there. You probably rode by there and noticed that they're paving 360 and they're parking their vehicles on our property. They were nice enough to open the gate, go through the gate instead of going over. So I don't have any idea how much longer that's gonna be. Like I told the board of supervisors, when you see the equipment out there, don't get all excited. We're not ready to go in there and put the interior roads in yet. You know, so the back to commission grant for the well update, that's gonna be, we plan to do 3 wells in 3 different locations in the property. It's, we're gonna apply for the grant for, tobacco commission. They're gonna supply $192,000 and we're gonna supply $192,000. That's why I wanted you to see the LGIP statement. We have the money, that's not a problem. And, we have a draft resolution in here for the Board of Supervisors. We're not sure whether we'll need it for the tobacco company grant, the tobacco commission grant. But it's always good to have a resolution for the Board of Supervisors when you apply for a grant. So we have that ready for their September meeting. August meeting, and so if we need it, we have it. That's all I have for the Commerce Park. And we talked about the Tobacco Commission grant and the draft resolution. GBC building update. That's still moving along very slowly. I'm sure Sam would tell you very slowly. Still on our plate. Hopefully in the next month or so, we'll have something for you. Gap Alliance. We had a meeting on the 28th of July. We've come a long way. David's here he's part of the Rural Resilience Advisors. He and Liz put that together, and they're the umbrella we've gone through to have our Regional Economic Development Organization. We've decided on a name, which is Gap Alliance. If you look at the map for state of Virginia, Goochland, Powhatan, and Amelia were in white. Everybody else was affiliated. So now we're affiliated. The state's already told us they're getting ready to redraw that map and put us in there. So that'd be a good idea. We've decided to get the design firm to work on a logo for us. They proposed to come up with 6 different logos for $150, and we can choose the one. I'm sure we're getting pretty close to that now. So all these figures I'm giving you are max figure. I mean, the total divided by 3. So it costs us $50 for that. Website design, that price came down from our meeting, so now $650 with free hosting for the first year, and $99 a year after that if we want them to keep hosting. So that's $650 for the Amelia. Establish a URL, www.gapalliancevirginia.com. We thank David for that. Not been populated yet, I don't think, last time I was there, but it's there. We're going to have an in-person meeting on September the 2nd with the Virginia VEDP in Richmond. Each one of the counties is going to have a little time to talk about what's going on in their county. Neil was nice enough to put together 3 slides for us. And I looked at those last night. It looks pretty good. And the only thing it's going to cost us down there is lunch. And I don't know how much that's, $25 to $35 a piece, and there'll be 2 of us from Amelia, so $70 maybe. You can't imagine we got a lunch we have for $70. I got a thing down here on finances, and $50 for the logo, $650 for the web, a total of $700. When we agreed to join the redo, I took that as tacit approval that we knew there was gonna be some startup costs, and that's why I went ahead and told them we pay our fair share for that. And I don't know if you'd wanna put a limit on what I can do on my own, or you just wanna trust me that I'm not gonna spend all your money. But you don't have to decide that today. I can't imagine anything coming up that would be too expensive. In fact, the startup is the only cost we've talked about. Really excited about what we've done so far. If y'all remember when we were talking about the heritage thing out of Farmville, it was I don't think they've still done a whole lot of stuff, but it's a whole lot cheaper than these three. So I don't think we'd ever gotten this done. We've got 6 people on the board of directors, and I think they have 21. So that's the report. Anybody have any questions about that? You do anytime, just give me a call, send me a text. Any new business? All right, we'll move on to EDA 101 with Mr. Denny. Where would you like to stand? Are you going to put something up on the board?
I think I've got a slideshow.
Okay.
I've been sitting in a car too long, so I'm gonna stand up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to move down there to this seat so I can see it like that.
Yeah, put that there. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me do this. This is kind of fun, as it I don't often get to educate anybody or work with anybody on new stuff. So this is kind of fun, and I appreciate that. And thanks for showing up today. Just a little bit of my background, just so you know, I didn't fall off the truck outside of town. I am a native of Danville, Virginia, born and raised in Danville. And my dad was a banker, local banker. My mom was a housekeeper until we went to college, and she figured she better go to work, keep us in Washington and Lee. So she did, and she worked for Danville Concrete Products, which was Danny Marshall's operation. Mom and dad, we actually grew up together. And so she worked with him in bookkeeping for a number of years. And I went off to college and got a degree in geology of all things, and then got a master's degree from Tennessee, University of Tennessee, and ended up in business. I was actually working for a gold company, an exploration company, because a lot of people don't know that all the gold before the strikes out in California in the 1800s came from this belt from Dahlonega, Georgia, all the way up to Culpeper, Virginia. It's called the Carolina Slate Belt. So we were going in and looking at a lot of the old gold claims, and my job was to go out in the field and do testing and take samples and stuff and try to avoid snakes, because there was a bunch of them where I was working. You get out of the truck with your snake leggings and you could hear pop, 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 pop. So, and I hate snakes, but you know, I had to live with them. So I did that for a while, ended up in business, and worked for engineering and architectural firms for about 20 years, 22 years. In different marketing roles, but also as a senior project manager. I worked on infrastructure projects and site development projects and that kind of thing. But I always had this love and fascination about economic development. So we were living in Blacksburg, Virginia. We lived there for 22 years. And I just got tired of being the overhead in a firm, that every time the economy turned down a little bit, they'd say, well, you're overhead, why don't you get out of here? So I decided I wanted to A, work in economic development, and 2, work for myself. So that way I could look in the mirror and yell at the boss all day and not get fired, but maybe not. So that's what I did 24 years ago, started my own economic development and small business practice, just consulting work, and had the opportunity for 12 years to work with a regional, actually a Southeast regional economic development organization called Sanford Holzhauser Economic Development. And we did the whole gamut of pretty large projects in economic development, including site location work for companies, especially foreign companies that were looking for a domestic location. But again, I got restless with that, and I'd known Liz Povar, and many of you know Liz. I'd known Liz Povar for probably 30 some years. And we had started working together because she started her own, she left BDP, and we started working together, so doing some consulting work. And we both had this feeling and this desire, and that was we want to work with rural localities and economic development because, as you know, rural areas and urban areas have the same desire when it comes to economic development. You want to create jobs and opportunity investment. The difference is capacity. And so what we try to do is to work with our rural areas in particular, but adjust our fees and adjust our fill in with your staffing and that type of thing to add capacity and add some oomph to your program. So that's what we do, and we've been doing it now for 2 years. And we had this idea about a regional economic development organization, and great that we've got 3 great members, including Amelia County EDA, and thank you for doing that. And just as an aside, Bob, after this meeting, I'm going to Richmond because Liz and I are meeting with 3 vice presidents at BDP to talk about the Gap Alliance.
Good.
We did 4 last week. We're doing 3 in person this week. So I'm going up there for that meeting. So anyway, thank you again. That's a long preamble. I don't mean to be too much with that, but what you do is extremely important. First of all, it's a sacrifice. You take time from your work, from your life, from your family, but it is a noble thing that you're doing. In Virginia, we have these economic development authorities, which are by statute established, and you've got a ton of different types of abilities that you have, both borrowing money, issuing bonds, leasing land, leasing buildings to tenants, all kinds of things that you can do. And the way I look at it is kind of a simple analogy for me because sometimes I have trouble getting my head around things. If you think about it, the Board of Supervisors is almost like an architect. They're coming up with a concept and a design, and they're putting some specifications on this building they're trying to build. But it doesn't happen until they get a builder or a developer, and you're the builder and developer. You're where the rubber meets the road when trying to develop things. So it's a good partnership. It needs to be a good partnership, but each has a role to play, and your role is extremely important. It's more like a public-private partnership, for lack of a better word. So getting into this, let me make sure I can make this work. That's always a challenge whenever you do these things.
They're all different.
Yeah. Oh, I probably hit it backwards. Yeah. Okay.
Trying to do something.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it move, but it's not moving.
Excuse me. Try to put it this way, it's USB down here.
Try it again.
Just one thing.
Sure. I can move over if you want me to. Sure. Okay.
So he's trying to get through. Ah, there we go.
Are we going now? Oh, yeah,
right.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. So anyway, what I'd like to talk about today with you is, the who, what, when, and how of economic development and kind of the context of it. Want to look at some of the trends that are today and for the future, because economic development is a process and economic development is constantly changing. But what are the fundamentals? If you don't know the fundamentals, you can't go take the step up and kind of go with the flow when things change. And finally, partnership roles and responsibilities are the next thing that we'll talk about. If you're agreeable, we got quite a few slides. We've got a limited amount of time, so if you don't mind, let me cover the slides. And if you got a question, just jot it down. And at the end, let's have a talk about and answer questions about those things. But if you feel compelled to jump in, just jump in. Okay, but why economic development? Well, really, there's three major players in economic development. First, they're companies. And companies are all about profit and sustainability. Where can I make money and how can I keep that flow coming? But for the citizens, it's all about quality of life and wealth creation. So it's about having a good job. It's also about having the revenue in your local government who can do amenities to really make it a great place to live. And then, of course, for the government, it's all about services for citizens, creating better and stronger communities. So as you know, if a company moves in or a person moves in, it adds to your burden on your services. So you're going to have to increase your water sewer service, got to provide these different things. So it's all about trying to get those services for the citizens, whether they're new or established, and create a better, strong community. This is kind of the who, what, when, and where. It's really important to know that economic development is not a one-off thing. It's not an announcement, even though, it's great to have an announcement. It's not, just water in somewhere. It is a process, and it takes a lot of background work, a lot of hard work, especially when it comes to developing sites and buildings, as you already know about this, as preaching to the choir. It just takes a while to do this. And I came from Danville and I've seen it firsthand. It's taken Berry Hill now is a very successful piece of property site, but it has taken them at least 15, 20 years to get that to the point where they attract these types of big projects. So it does take a while to do that. So who leads this? Well, really, it's, as I said, it's a process, but it's also a team thing. It's designated individuals. So it might be an economic developer, local economic developer. It might be the EDA, but there'll be a designated individual or organizations for that. And again, it's a process. It influences the growth and structuring of economies. And it's not something, again, that happens once. It is a marathon. It is what's not a sprint. It's a marathon. You put your plans together, you work together, you work with your partners, and you slowly, surely, you win the race. And it's done actually internationally. It's done on a country level, state level, regional level, and then local level. And each one of those levels are kind of going towards the same goal, but in different ways with different responsibilities. And it's done through understanding of businesses, proactively creating healthy climates for business development, having a vision and goals. That's extremely important. You can't know where you're going to go until you have a vision of where you want to go. And you've got to partner, and you can't just do it all on your own. There are partners in anything you do in economic development. And then the best thing to do is to measure results and adapt your strategy. So if you've got that vision and strategy, monitor that, see how you're progressing on that. And that can be something as simple as a spreadsheet, or it can be something as complex as a fiscal impact analysis. So those are all things very, very important to understand. The economic development process has got many layers of government, including county, cities, and towns. So again, I hope you can see it's not a simplistic thing, but it's something that I like to tell people this too. I don't think there might be only one degree in the whole country that you can get in economic development. Most people in economic development are like me. They come from a varied background, either in business, planning, lots of different things, but they get into economic development. So to be honest with you, in some ways, it's pretty simplistic. The fundamentals are kind of the same, but the landscape changes, and we'll talk about that some too. Here's some of the changes, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but essentially on the left-hand side, these are the traditional economic development components. So, and they're still fundamentals. They're still fundamental to what we do. But things have changed over the years, and they continue to change. It used to be you just say, hey, we're open for business and we've got a bunch of incentives, and it's all about jobs, 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 and that's it. But now that has kind of morphed over. Yes, it's all those things, but it also
yeah, don't want just jobs and then they go away in 5 years. How many times have you looked around the Commonwealth and seen a big company? I mean, Dan River Mills. Who thought Dan River Mills would ever go away? And it devastated my hometown. And so you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but it used to be, hey, just bring us jobs, we'll take it, and then not look for the future. Now it's all about sustained growth. Give us the jobs, but tell us that you're sustainable and you can grow this thing. And it's very data driven. Everything these days is data driven. Back in the old days, you could win things almost on a handshake, or somebody, a company rep says, "Oh, I like these people. They're really nice. I think we'll go there." Well, that doesn't happen anymore. It's very, very data driven. And it's about competitiveness and productivity. On the project deal side, you can read that. It was really very, very tactical, transactional. You want to come here? Yes, we do. Okay, we got a building over here. We'll sell it to you for this, or hey, maybe we'll give it to you. That type of thing. Very prescriptive, very bricks and mortar oriented. And as I said, one-offs, and that's all changed. Yes, some of those factors are still there, but they've morphed into, again, focus more on sustained economic growth for the long term and looking at human capital. Do you have the right human capital? Do you have the right workforce? Do you have not just the numbers, but you have the quality of the workforce? And then finally swinging for the bleachers. It used to be that everybody wanted that big deal. You got to have that big deal. Or what's the next big thing? Is it chip manufacturing? I know we all went down the road in Virginia about chip manufacturing. And it never really panned out the way they thought it was going to be. And now it's all about, entrepreneurial ecosystems. Yes, it's all about trying to find a good, big, solid project, but it's also about developing your own through entrepreneurial development, resiliency, benchmark to focus resources and regional and global growth. It's not just about my patch. It's also about, well, what's good for the region is good for us. We can all benefit from that. So those are the things that really have transitioned to make it a more dynamic and sometimes a more complicated process in economic development. This is one that an issue that I especially like, I guess because I did come from business, and I learned from some people who taught me that you got to have a business mindset for a lot of things in your life to really be successful. So, what is a business mindset? Well, what are the costs of public services per household in your community? So that's part of an equation, a business equation. What are the taxes that are going to be paid in your community per household? Whether that's bringing in a company that will add to that tax base, and also adding, calculating up what your households will pay. And then what's the gap? And the gap between the cost of public services and the taxes collected is the primary reason we do economic development, is to keep that balance, or to keep that in the pro side and the upscale side. So the business taxpayers do fill that gap very well. And then you want to figure out, well, what types of businesses can you attract to help fill that gap? If you're only looking at a low wage, low investment type of project, you need a lot of those to fill that gap. But maybe if you don't want the 500 employee, $100 million project because you don't think you can support it, maybe the 50 million or 25 million with 50 employees or 100 employees is the way to go, because still the business formula still works. The business case still works. You want to fill that gap with some companies. In a place like Amelia or other rural areas, can probably help fill that gap through some entrepreneurial work. Grow in place, I call it. There's some great examples of companies that started out as 3 or 4 people and had an idea, got some good support from local folks, and grew their business. And they stayed, and now they employ 50, 100, 150 people and been very successful. So, in rural areas in particular, you've got a lot of folks with a lot of great ideas, and it's just a matter of creating an ecosystem to help them develop themselves and grow themselves in place. And speaking of rural aspects of rural economic development, um, it's the factors are lower population densities, obviously, longer distances between economic assets, stronger reliance on natural resources, agriculture, manufacturing, tourism, smaller budgets. We all know about those. The issue of brain drain, and that's not just rural areas, it's also some of the areas like, again, that I came from. Kids couldn't wait to get out of high school and go somewhere sexy, for lack of a better word. Um, and then sometimes you have that issue of the come heres versus the from heres. The people who've been here, they don't want things to change necessarily, but you got a bunch of people moving in, they don't think they can just shake it up. And there's that tension sometime between those that needs to be fostered, a solution to try to make everybody feel like they're from here eventually. And you got fewer institutional resources, so you don't have a four-year college anywhere. What's the closest community college? Is it Southside? Over in Blackstone? I know they got a facility over in Blackstone, but Right Point. Okay, yeah. So that's close, but still, it's not a large force four-year college or training facility. And then, of course, you've got philanthropic organizations. Foundations like the Cameron Foundation over in Petersburg or
John Randolph.
Yeah, exactly. There's those foundations which can help you drive from a financial standpoint. Those are often missing too. So rural areas have to rely on these relationships. It's really more relation based, and that's why this regional organization that you've decided to join, I think, is one of the reasons that Liz and I thought, hey, this might be a good idea. Because right now you're kind of the flagship, or you're running it on your own, and now you've got two more partners in this, and you're complementary. You have complementary abilities, and a regional organization has more influence when it comes to the state than you do individually. So all of these things are challenges in many ways, but it's reality. And in business, or in economic development, you have to deal with reality. How do you overcome or work around, or how do you turn some of the realities into assets for yourself when you tell your stories? So challenges, but plenty of opportunities too. I talked about the business's core needs, and us all need to think like a business. Very simple stuff. They want a suitable location with reliable infrastructure. That's where groups like yourself and your efforts really are so extremely important, because you're trying to provide that. That's why they call it product. In economic development, we say sites and buildings are product, because at the end of the day, we're kind of selling those things to a company. You got to have that adequate supply of qualified workers. So it's not just quantity, it's got to be qualified. And that's where your training programs, that's where your K through 12 programs come into play, the CTE programs. GoTech, if you're in GoTech, it's another great way to, and RISE is another one of doing workforce training. And you got to have a business-friendly environment. I won't name the county, but we were trying to do some consulting work in a county in Virginia, and the contract was, minuscule. It was like $10,000 or $15,000, wasn't much, but they had a rule that we had to get a business license to do. And I got thinking about it, said, well, what about if you're a contractor and you're coming in to do something on a road? Do they have to have a business license too? They said, well, you don't have to pay us anything in taxes or anything, but you got to have a license. So we had to pay a fee to get a license. It was great. You don't want to be that way. You want to make it as easy as possible, not give away the farm, but you want to be as easy as possible to get companies to come in and see that you're business friendly. And reasonable costs of doing business. That are your water rates, reliable, or the reasonable? Is a company paying its fair share and not being targeted to pay more than its fair share? So those types of things, and then reliable and knowledgeable partners. And that's where this, we'll talk about business retention and expansion as a service that we offer in economic development. And that's where this reliable, knowledgeable partners really comes to fore, because if you're out visiting with companies and companies feel that you are truly a partner and looking out for them, it's going to be a successful marriage. So doing those types of things. So again, think like the client being businesses. There's 16 key trends that are shaping the future. We talked about kind of where economic development was, and what are the things that are the future business of economic development. And there's a list. The red ones are the ones that are really the newest. They've happened in probably the last 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and into the future. Again, I talked about it. I think COVID really was a stimulant for a lot of this entrepreneurial awakening. You had a lot of people who couldn't go into their jobs or came out of COVID and said, I'm just disgusted with what I'm doing, but I got an idea. I really want to kind of like, hey, I want to work for myself. I want to be my boss and put the pressure on myself. And there's a lot of that going on, a lot of entrepreneurial awakening, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals that are developing. And the other thing is workforce housing. And I think the important thing about workforce housing, I mean, it used to be if you had a prospect come in, you never talked about housing. They might ask, well, we're going to move Bill down from Minnesota. Can you get me in touch with a realtor for a house? They never thought about this. But if you don't have good housing and a variety of houses, you're going to be challenged with the workforce. Because at the end of the day, if you bring a company in and you don't have enough local workforce, the workforce is going to come somewhere. Well, one of the goals ought to be, well, let's get them to come down here and buy a house and live here while they work in this new factory, instead of commuting down an hour or whatever it might be. And workforce housing should not be construed as subsidized housing. It's about having houses that are not the upper end of the market or the lower end of the market, but in the market, the area of the market that workers who are working in a factory, whether they're in management, whether they're line workers, whatever they may be, they've got enough quantity of affordable houses that they can live in. Childcare is something that's relatively new in the mix when it comes to talking to prospects. And I think back to a time when we were living in Blacksburg. I was doing some work, or actually had an office at the Corporate Research Center there in Blacksburg. And they had a great idea. They said, we've got all these really smart people, and we've got these spouses who've moved down with their husbands. They're, at Tech, and they have nothing to do. They want something to do. So maybe they get a secretarial job, whatever it might be, but they can't really do those things without childcare. So Virginia Tech Corporate Foundation, which runs the CRC, teamed up with a childcare provider, and they built the CRC built the facility, and the childcare operation operated it. And so that was something that they offered businesses that wanted to move into CRC, and it was great. And this was 10 years ago. So childcare is a big deal because it frees up workforce if parents know they've got good childcare in the area. Site ready development, it used to be got a greenfield piece of property, a company would come in and say, oh, that's a great piece of property. Okay, buy that property, or you give it to me and I'll set my place up here. That doesn't work anymore. They're looking for site ready things. In Virginia, we have this Virginia Business Ready Site program, and it has a tiered system by readiness. So one is just a piece of land, a green piece of land normally, that's controlled by a public entity usually. With number 5, it's got all the infrastructure in it. It's got, you can have a company up and running in 12 to 14 months, essentially a construction cycle. So it is ready to go. So there's a lot of emphasis on trying to move these up, and that chain, that tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is a great strategy or a roadmap for you to make each progress until you get to number 5. Healthcare, again, it's kind of like the childcare side of things. You've got to have good healthcare, and that can be many things. That can be local clinics. That can be ready access to a major hospital. It can be a lot of things, but Liz and I just started a project over in the coal fields of West Virginia. And I never thought in a country that's, as rich as we are, that you'd have counties that don't even have a doctor's office. They don't have a dentist office. They don't have eye specialists. They don't have anybody. So if they get sick and have anything or even routine stuff, they have to get in the car and drive an hour and a half to Bluefield. So, having some type of access is a minimum. Having good health care is really essential. And then federal and state policy. So, I'm not going to get into federal and state policies too much. Right now, they're all around energy, they're around tariffs. I mean, it's all the stuff that affects how we are able to develop things and how we're able to attract businesses. So that's the importance of it. And that used to not really come in at all. And then I've mentioned energy, and there's just this whole issue about energy, about supply, but also about turnaround times of getting substations in and all that stuff. So energy, and then your mix of energy, and is it reliable or not? So these are all things that are new that have to be considered. And things that aren't going to go away. They're going to continue. The list here may change over the next 5 years, where other things are emphasized and some things are less emphasized, but still, the bottom line is that it's ever changing. And just to be aware of what the changes are will really help a lot, I think, as you move forward. Without a lot of commentary, there's still four fundamentals of economic development. And at the top of this is the sexy one. Everybody wants that big announcement to have the governor come down and do all that stuff. So it's business attraction. That's where you're trying to bring new companies into the area. Second was grow your own. That's more the entrepreneurial side of things. And we talked a little bit about that. Business expansion, and this one is extremely important. It goes back to what I talked about earlier, being a good partner and understanding your local companies that exist and having a good relationship with them and being supportive. There was a statistic in economic developers have used for decades that used to be that the number was 80%, 75% of your new business, your jobs and investment comes from 20% of the businesses. And now it's 80, it's 80-20 now with 75-25. So the majority of new business, new jobs and investment come from existing business, but it's not as sexy. The good news is it's a lower cost. It's lower cost because essentially at the end of the day, it's about time. It's having someone go out and sit down with companies and do things for companies and have events for companies and all those things to build that relationship and to help them if they're having issues, try to help them with those issues, or to learn that, maybe they've got a supplier who is not in this area. Well, why don't we talk about trying to attract your supplier here to supply you, get a little closer, you both win with that. So that's an extremely important part of this, and that's why it's a bigger part of the pyramid. And then the last part is placemaking and talent for talent. And more, whether it's entrepreneurial or whether it's a higher tech business, whatever it might be, the new workers, the generational workers, having a great place, lots of different amenities and activities and fun, whether it be outdoor stuff, whether that be events that they go to. It's important to have a place that your workers who might want to come in and work say, hey, this is a great place to live. So I won't commute 60 miles or an hour or whatever to this. I'll go ahead and move there. And by the way, they have affordable housing, so I can buy a house now. So it's all interrelated. And just in kind of put this in perspective about costs and efforts. So business attraction has the most time involved, the most cost involved, but you usually get the biggest bang for your buck. You'll get more attention, and that helps attract other companies in also. Grow your own. It takes a lot of hand holding and stuff, and sometimes Unfortunately, if those companies can make it 2 years, they're usually going to be okay, and then they can grow from there. It's that first 2 years which are difficult, and they need a lot of support. So you may have support organizations like the Small Business Development Center, RISE, might be another one, but and then expansion, the business expansion, we've talked about that. That's mainly a time issue, but less cost. But you get a really big bang for your buck and you can keep your companies happy and keep them growing. And then placemaking for talent, that really is a shared thing with your Chamber of Commerce, with your Parks and Recs, with all kinds of different partners on that. And it just takes time and it takes a little bit of money to get that moving forward. You know, I talked about a little bit about placemaking and talent attraction. And it fuels the economy, the community's health. It's live here and work there. It allows you to live here and work here. You can, if you can attract and make your placemaking, your talent attractive. And then I got there's some links on here, and I'm just going to talk about Get to Roanoke, the one at the bottom. Because I think Roanoke is an extremely good example of how this can work. You know, Roanoke, Virginia was a railroad town. That's why it was founded. Well, actually, it was Big Lick at one point, but then the railroad came in. So the railroad built it. But then the railroad started pulling out and things didn't look that great. The manufacturing base was okay, but it wasn't that great. They made a decision that they wanted to really emphasize their outdoor amenities as a place. And so they've got the river there, they've got the mountains, and they started consciously, that was their vision. They consciously said, okay, we're going to start pushing ourselves as a great place to come and live, to attract the talent, and also at the same time, we're working to bring new businesses in. So this is a website that they've created, and essentially, if you get a chance, write that down and try to go look at it, because it's a pretty amazing thing. They talk about, I mean, they've got lots of different things on there, but they've got a site and explains why somebody should want to live there. They've got tools for housing, to find housing. They've got job announcements from the area, you know, who's hiring, what kind of jobs are on there. They show all the recreational activities and amenities around the place, around the county and the town. They show all the cultural and community events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They really lay out why Roanoke is such a great place for you to come live and work. And it has really turned that place around. You go there now and it has a whole different feel to it. Than when I used to visit my grandfather. He was a machinist at Schaefer's Crossing for 45 years on the Norfolk and Western, and it has changed so much since those days. So it's just an idea of that you can take for the future, is to really try to develop that place because it is important as you're trying to attract the quality and the quantity of workforce, as well as growing your own. Another thing on the placemaking side, and I'll just give you a little bit of side. These are some localities, rural localities have really taken this to heart and have been successful with it. And I'm familiar with the Crooked Road because I lived in Southwest Virginia for 22 years and worked with some folks on Crooked Road stuff, along with some tourism related to the Wilderness Road. But how many people have ever heard of the Crooked Road or been on the Crooked Road? Anybody? Okay. We had all of these little towns and rural areas starting in Rocky Mount, Virginia, and going up to Dickinson County to Chitwood, not Clintwood. Clintwood is the home of, oh gosh, and it just lost one of the big bluegrass stars. He's been around forever, but he's dead. I'll remember it at the end, and I'll tell you what. Ralph Stanley, thank you, but he just went away. But Reverend Stanley was from that area. But along the way, you had Floyd. You know, Floyd is known for its music, and it's got venues there for like the Floyd Country Store every Friday night. Go downtown Floyd, and it's amazing. Rocky Mount, you got the Harvester. You know, the Harvester. Rocky Mount was one of my clients when I was working for an engineering firm, and I was there when they developed the Harvester. It's a phenomenal place to go to hear music, and there's all kinds of bluegrass and country music and everything going along around town. So somebody had the idea, why don't we link up all of these different little towns along this route? And it goes up Route 8, and then I think it goes up 58. But anyway, it goes from Rocky Mount to Clintwood, and they have all the music venues, they have events going on, they have museums, they have just a lot of different arts and crafts, and they built everything, branded it around this Crooked Road concept. And what it's done for the local localities that the Crooked Road passes through is phenomenal. No, it's not, millions of dollars of investment or anything like that, but it gets tourists coming through the area, spending their money. Who knows? You might have somebody who is a bluegrass fan who owns a company in the Northeast and is tired of the Northeast, and they like what they see. That happened in Radford, Virginia, many years ago. You had somebody coming down the interstate, and he liked Radford, and when he stopped to have lunch, so he put his factory there. I mean, so these things do work, and you're familiar with Virginia Civil War trails because I think the trails come through here. So I can't really speak about how successful that's been from an economic standpoint. Fields of Gold is another one, though. It's in the Shenandoah Valley. And what they decided to do was they had all these small farms and big farms and farm stands and ice cream dairies and all this stuff. So they put together this organization called Fields of Gold, and it essentially is agritourism. And and they've got websites, they've got materials, they've got things going on. They've got members who join who are farmers and dairymen and that type of thing. And it's been extremely successful in attracting tourists to the area who do nothing but come just to go around to these different places and get homemade ice cream and buy stuff. And so it's that type of thing that really anybody can do as long as you got an idea, but it takes some time to organize. But at the end of the day, it's all about trying to attract. Number one is to help develop rural entrepreneurs who can be on these trails and supply different things, but it's also about trying to get tourism into your area to build your local economies. Talked about business retention and expansion. This is the high percentage of new jobs and capital investments come from existing business. This is really the responsibility of the local government. The Commonwealth of Virginia does actually have essentially a VRE program, and they have regional folks who come down working with localities to go visit companies. So it is a partnership between the state, Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and the local. But really, the onus is really on the local folks because your business is better than anybody else. And as you can see, there's some things. The retention of capital base secures your tax revenue. The outreach is cost efficient. Essentially, you just go put on a schedule, you go out and sit down with somebody, or you take them to lunch and have a discussion about their business. You do that on a quarterly basis or every 6 months, whatever the frequency is. And it's really the opportunity to identify problems before they become unsolvable. The last thing you want is just to wake up one day and your local factory, your local business has said, well, we're shutting down tomorrow, when they may have had a problem for a while. And if you knew about the problem, you might be able to reach out to some other partners and get some help for them. It gives you the opportunity to validate the fact that hey, I believe our business climate is great. We're doing great here. We're really supportive. Well, they may tell you, well, yeah, in most areas you are, but maybe you need to work on this particular area in particular. So that's very important. And they create business champions. I think this is one of the premier reasons that you should be out working with your businesses, because businesses can not only support things that happen in your community if they're happy with the community and become your champions, but also when a company comes and looks, they're going to pay attention to what the local business owners have to say. And if you got a good business champion for your locality, that is golden on a prospect visit. And you can create a professional service team that is creative and customer focused. And that could be, architects, engineers, whatever your needs may be. If they're in the area, you can, you need somebody to come out and do survey or to do design, and you got a good relationship with them. That's one reason to go out and talk to those types of folks also. And this is just an example. If you get a chance sometime, take a look at Frederick County. That's up in the upper Shenandoah Valley. I guess that would be down the valley because it's north, but they call it down the valley. But they made a decision that they were not going to focus on business attraction because they had a really good manufacturing base already. They were going to just focus on call teams to visit local businesses and communicate training resources, expansion assistant opportunities, problem solving, all those types of things. And it's really been amazingly successful for them. They've got a track record of facilitating financial and workforce training assistance and expanding their companies. And those are all the figures that they use, the CapEx for expansion of businesses and that type of thing. So it's been very successful. It's, again, you have to kind of put that this is just an example, but it is I say a supercharged example because they do have such a broad manufacturing base. If you don't have that much manufacturing base, you're not going to achieve those types, but you are going to keep your companies and you keep expanding your companies in place, which is really a goal. And it's something that can be done with not a lot of money, but with some effort. Of course, we talked a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of things. And again, that's long-term, but it can create businesses. It's got to be systematic, have a systematic approach to this that uses not just your resources, most of the resources to help support these early businesses and entrepreneurs come from a region or from the state. They might come from a university. They may come from community college, small business development center, like I say, RISE, those types of business support organizations, or SCORE, who is a organization of retired executives. And that can always be a good resource to help with that. And you're part of the RISE region in Southern Virginia, I believe. So you do have that program available. It's a really good ecosystem that's coordinated through Southern Virginia Innovation Center, and it's supported by Mid-Atlantic broadband staff. So they have some staffing to help out too. And they've got funding from Go Virginia and some other federal partners that keeps them clicking along. I think the important thing is to get those resources to the entrepreneur, and don't ask the entrepreneur to drive 45 minutes or an hour to go, because they're trying to build their business. That's the goal, is to get them to build and sustain their business. So if you can get those support to them, that's golden. Do everything you can. It's kind of like with the bigger business. Do everything you can to help them grow, help them sustain. The challenges are, they are going to be influenced by the quality of place. It kind of makes me laugh. We went through this phase where every town wanted to have a coffee shop because that's what all these millennials, they want a coffee shop. So there's that and a microbrewery. You got those two, you got it made. Entrepreneurials are typically require really extensive support networks, and that's where those agencies and organizations I just mentioned come into play. Again, if you can get them past the first 2 years, they're going to be golden. They've got a good idea. They've got a good business model. Things are working, and they can grow from there. But it's that first 2 years, which is really tough. And you just have to have significant staff is necessary, and sometimes with limited rewards. It takes some patience too. But I do go back and here's some examples of some of the entrepreneurial stuff. And one of my gigs in projects was I was hired to be the executive director under contract with the Greater Williamsburg Partnership. And that was James City County, York County, and City of Williamsburg. And they had a facility and a program called Launchpad. And Launchpad and it's still in existence, but they've expanded some. They've got an operation down in Hampton Road somewhere. But they give workspace, guidance, mentoring, those types of things. They have partners that they hook companies up who are in Launchpad. That could be SCORE. Hampton Roads has a group, and William and Mary, because they're located next to William and Mary. They have guest speakers, memberships, seed funds. But what really was encouraging for me when I worked there I was with them for about 2.5, 3 years. There were two guys who came into Launchpad and paid their money to have a little office space there. They were called SBT Robotics. And they started out with two people, and they now are worldwide. And this has been only in 8 years. But they started out there, they got support, they got what they needed, they got seed money, they got connections, they got all of those things. And what they do is they do robotic integration. So if you've got a factory that's got 10 different brands of robots in it, and they all have to talk a different language, they've created a way that all these robots can work as a unit. They understand each other through these SDT robotic systems. And it's phenomenal. They just announced that they have a worldwide contract with DHL, which is the big international freight carrier, because they use robots everywhere. And this shows you what can happen if you give people and entrepreneurs with a good idea, the right kind of support. This is what can happen. And so they employ hundreds of people now, and they're global. And they started out as a 2-person firm 8 years ago in Launchpad. So it's a great success story, I think, and a good model. Business attraction. This again is the one that gets the most attention. The press and the governor and everybody else gets so excited about it. It does increase the size of the local economy. That's a benefit. It diversifies the tax base and employment base. And there's another county actually in the new region, and I'm not going to mention names because I probably shouldn't, but it's all public. Their tax mix was really off kilter. They were 75% residential and about 25% commercial. Well, 20% commercial, 5% industrial. And they knew they couldn't keep doing that. And so this is where the Board of Supervisors worked with the EDA, and Board of Supervisors said, we want the mix to change. And we can't do it overnight, but we want to change it so that we've got a higher amount of industrial and commercial than we have now, less in our tax revenue coming from residential. So they put everything in motion around that concept for the next 3 to 5 years. This is our goal, and they've got percentages, but I can't even remember what the percentages were. But that's what the diversification of the base does. It helps increase your tax revenues in certain areas, and still being so you're able to provide the services that need it. And it's the most visible result of economic development. Like I said, it's when the governor gets on the comes down, and everybody gets very excited, and all the local officials get excited, and EDA gets excited, and everybody gets excited. The challenge is, though, it is the most competitive. I think there's something like, I'm trying to remember, 11,000 economic development organizations in the US alone. And when we're talking about attraction, we're not talking about just the US. Your competition is global. And you look at all of the countries around the world that have strong economic development programs. They're trying to get that company to move here to England or wherever instead of coming to Amelia County. So it's extremely competitive, and you really have to think about how do you position yourself, not only with what you talk about in your assets, but what are your goals? Because back in the old day, well, when Amazon announced that they were going to have this competition, I was in Richmond with we were up in DC, and I was on a mission with Virginia Economic Development Partnership, and the manager I was with got called back to Richmond because Amazon had just announced that they wanted to have that HQ2 competition. And all of a sudden, every locality in Virginia was sending fruit baskets, was doing this. And I told the president of the CEO of VP, I said, you really need to put the lid on this and expectations. Not every very few of these localities are going to get anywhere, and they're getting so worked up, and their boards are getting worked up, and they're telling the economic developers, you got to go get this, and it's not going to happen. So it's about being intentional about who you go after and making sure that it fits your community. Uh, it is generally an expensive strategy. You're already witnessing that with trying to develop your product, your site, your park. And you got to have a lot of elements in place to reduce the risk for the business client. And there's just a bunch of different criteria that are some of those things that need to be in place in order to get to be a tier 5 ready for business type of company. So it takes a lot of work. It doesn't mean you can't have success somewhere along that path, but if you want to be top in class and you want to get the most attention, you've got a lot of things to put in place or to explain as an asset that you have or one that needs to be developed further. Really, partnerships are key. And I think about anything that you do, it's hard to be the lone wolf and go your own. And economic development is extremely important because business is the center cog that makes the world go around in economic development. But you've got state, you've got regional, you've got locality, you got nonprofits, and you got the Fed. All of those have a role to play, and all of those influence how things work. No single entity can do it by itself. And always remember the business is the center of everything. We're getting close to wrapping up here. But I think it is important to understand the Virginia way because we are unique in how we do economic development in Virginia. We're very much based on a state to region to locality model. So Commonwealth Virginia, they go out and market to the world. They market and say, listen, Virginia is the top place to be. This is where you want to create your opportunities, your sustainabilities. And they talk about all of our assets and they talk about the business climate and all those types of things. Well, what happens if they get a prospect in, they get a company that says, well, we're interested in Virginia and we need, certain size site and we eventually want this size building and we need this kind of workforce and they have a whole list of criteria. They reach down through the regional groups and I think now with the addition of the GAP Alliance, I think there are 19 economic development regions in Virginia. And these are all organizations that come together for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's because they have a common culture. Sometimes it's because of geography. Sometimes it's because of both. So there's lots of different reasons for doing that. But the Commonwealth, once they get that lead and they may vet it a little bit and say, well, we think that the GAP Alliance is a good regional group. So they'll come to the GAP Alliance and say, we've got this prospect that this is what they're interested in. And then it's our job to funnel that down to our local members and work with our local members in a support staff in a support situation. And if the local member has got everything that's needed, we work with them to get that back up to the state and presents that to the prospect. And eventually the goal is to try to get them interested enough to come, the company interested enough to come and visit. And that's when the hard work starts. The rest of the work with the preliminary work on the regional basis and on the local basis, make sure you got all your data in line, that you've got a good team together, you kind of got a philosophy or a strategy of how you would handle a prospect visit, who needs to be at those visits, what do you want to show them while you're here, how do you highlight and hit all the things that are really important to them, like workforce, like house, like sites and buildings, all those things. So it is really a team sport. I live in North Carolina and North Carolina is not like this and no other states are like this because North Carolina used to have regional groups and they were actually funded by the state, but they did away with those. Shoot, I came on board Sanford. This was my first project with Sanford Holzhauser was Advantage West, which was a bunch of counties in the city of Asheville out in the western part. And they brought me on to help them understand how they could fundraise because they were going to lose all their state funding. So the state does not fund regional groups anymore. They're coming back kind of like Virginia is because we're all self-funded. The regional groups are all self-funded. They're not funded by the state. But, They just have a different model. Georgia has a different model. They all do, but we work this way and it's worked very well for us. But it's all about having strategic vision and action plan, attraction new business, existing business retention, expansion, marketing and promotion, the product development, business formation, tourism workforce, and all the other things that we've talked about. Within that Virginia way, we cover all those bases in lots of different ways. And this slide is generally the primary roles and responsibilities for each of those levels that I just mentioned in the Virginia Way system. And it really, a lot of it depends on really solid communication. So as you'll see, let's start on the right-hand side of the state. The state, as I said, does marketing, responsible for business climate, the state business climate strategies to focus like workforce, broadband, transportation, big one, research, supply chains, making sure that we've got a good supply chain for a lot of different types of businesses, and then helping to create funding sources like the Go Virginia program or the Tobacco Commission, those types of things. Then on the regional, as we talked about, it's about trying to put together a workforce story. So it's not about an individual locality member telling a workforce story. It's trying to find the consolidation of the three members in our new GAP Alliance. How does that workforce story look? Because, you know, to be honest with you, most companies don't start out looking at a locality. They start out looking at a state and then they look at a region, and region is where you can begin to make a good regional pitch that gets their attention. The region focuses on higher education, infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And on the local level, it's all about real estate, your infrastructure, especially the broadband, early education, K through 12, the local tax policy, quality of life is a big one. We talked a lot about that. The existing businesses, you know, you've got a good business ecosystem where in your locality, and you have good relationships with them. And then stakeholders and champions, that could be your local bank, that could be business champions who tout doing business here. That could be the church religious structure. It could be a lot of different folks or stakeholders and champions for your locality. And you can only have success in economic development if you have a shared vision at the local level. And you can read these, you know, it really is about sharing flexible long-term strategies, being committed to confidentiality. That's a big deal with companies and actually with the state too. Company or you get an opportunity, it's always good to keep that to yourselves until something really happens, because you don't want to have egg on your face if things don't work out, or the company finds out that something that should be confidential is widely known. They will turn around and run the other way. Got to have good communication strategies in place between your partnership and partners. Stakeholders have to be engaged, and you have to commit resources, which are staff and funding, to make that happen. I think that really the shared leadership and shared vision, or leadership and vision, in a fundamental way comes down to two entities. That's your elected officials and your EDA. You need to be on the same page. You need to have regular communication. Share ideas. You may not always agree 100% on everything, but have that dialogue and be able to communicate with each other and come to a shared vision and move forward together. Everywhere you look, they have that good line of communication, that good partnership, that shared vision that's successful. And believe me, we see plenty of places where that does not happen, and they are suffering. So sometimes we have to park ourselves at the curb. Our ego's at the curb and bite a little humble pie, but it helps. It helps a lot to have that single vision, that single effort together to move forward. Things like having meetings on a regular basis with your counterparts, or joint planning. I don't know if you guys do workshops, especially when the budget's coming up and stuff, if you have workshops or planning sessions or anything like that, but that's also a really good way to try to come to the single vision and to share the load. I'm not gonna read this. I mean, it's stating the obvious. I think that it's important that the Board of Supervisors has a role, and as I said, it's analogous to me to an architect. They're designing, they're putting specifications. EDA has the hammer and the nails and the power equipment to build it. And can't have a great building if you don't have both of those. And they've got to have a shared vision of what that building's going to look like. You know, again, you've got a lot of powers with the statutes that you have for setting this up. It's again, it's ensure alignment with the county and communicate, and serve as the integrator of stakeholder views. And that's not only just government, but it's also your business community. You're the ones that can kind of bring all the conversations together into a vision and collaboration and partnerships. And I believe that is it. So I know that was a lot to cover. I think if I had to sum it up, it's this. There's some fundamental things that will be here forever. There are some new things that are influencing how we do economic development. It's all about having partners and having good relationships, having common visions. And it's also about just rolling your sleeves up. And it's also about asking for help. If you think you can't solve a problem on your own, reach out. You know, reach out. There's plenty of partners around the Commonwealth. There's partners in your region who are willing to help, because we're all in the same boat. You know, we all want success. We all want to help our citizens. We all want to have a long, sustainable place for our kids to grow up and our grandkids to grow up. So I'll take any questions if you have any right now. And I think I did okay on time. I don't know.
Was a lot of information. I'm aware of, we're at tier 3 now. We get these wells in, maybe we can move up to a tier 4. We're going in the right direction. It's frustrating when it takes so long. Yeah. I was blown away when I found out how many people the Commonwealth of Virginia has that dedicated to international business. You know, how many people they have dedicated to visiting and trying to draw international businesses to Richmond.
Yeah, they have offices over stuff with close, they and those who represent Virginia.
I think they count those doing also.
But Bob, it actually goes two ways. You know, they're there to help sell goods, brands, and also I've done this in Europe. I'll go over and I will meet people. They'll set up points, they'll hold my hand and do all those types of things. Help on the outside for us to market ourselves.
Well, I think the Gap Alliance is going to help us. You know, we've got Hampton Carver is our real estate developer. And when he went down to the meeting in Virginia State, he sat at your table and he got to meet Nora and Roxanne. And he's already politicking with them. And says, you know, if you get an inquiry that you can't handle, let me know about it. Maybe Amelia can do it, you know. So Amelia is of the 3, we don't have anything going on like they do. They've got a lot of stuff going on. So, but they're all 3 of both the directors are aware of that and aware of our Commerce Park over here. We've already had some inquiries. So.
Well, that was one thing, Liz and I, before we approached the subject about the regional thing, we looked at a lot of detail about what are the common things,
right,
what are the uncommon things, but also what are some synergies. And I think from a product standpoint, site standpoint, the 3 are great because Goochland is probably more advanced when it comes to sites. Powhatan is trying to get there, and you guys have got a nice piece of property. But you can attract different sectors and different types of companies that maybe don't want to be in a Powhatan or
because there's no sites for them
Right.
that size.
Yeah.
But maybe, hey, here you go. Plus, we look at it, I just thought about this the other day, I was talking to Liz about it. You think about this for a minute, you're kind of a gateway to the Richmond, Petersburg metro area, but you're also a gateway to the middle part of
Right.
Virginia, Parksville, Lynchburg, those types of places. So you've got opportunity to attract
Both ways.
more both ways, yeah.
Well, I keep having it in the back of my mind that when they do the 288 extension and business park's gonna come out there and they're gonna do have no telling what. But maybe we would fit in from some ancillary business, you know, but that would support them. And it's what, 10 minutes away? Yeah. It's a ways away, but gotta have a vision, I guess.
Have you seen any these developments that kind of locate or center around agriculture? I look at what Amelia brings. You know, we're an agricultural community. That's our basis. There's a lot of emphasis now, you know, on food, less processed, improving the quality of really food being less processed. And what we offer is access here of food that's grown, and we're right here. So, for example, meat processor, you know, there's demand for locally processed meat. And I didn't know if you had any examples of those businesses. Nelson, the 151 is kind of in that way. They could use local wheat, but you're actually seeing a decrease in drinking in the Z's and millennials.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's kind of something like the beer train was good 15 years ago, but it's gone. Food thing is hot now. I've got a 27-year-old. She makes her own food, no processed food, and she lives on Monument Avenue. Friends are the same way.
Yeah.
So I kind of see like that's the attractiveness, Amelia. Like you said, we're the more agricultural of the three. So we literally could be the place that starts to generate that. You see a lot of interest in power table, farm to table, and Goochland, also higher income areas. Whether if you had any examples of where that could be leveraged.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. And this is interesting. My last executive director position with the regional group was Virginia's Growth Alliance. And in the last year before that closed down, I left. I think we had 3 or 4 processing plants. Well, these weren't big operations, but they were meat processing, small processing plants. And a lot of those come now. But as far as food hubs is another thing. It's food hubs, and I don't know if you're familiar with a food hub or not, but they've been around for a while, but they're kind of going on steroids now, where they'll have a facility and it can serve like 4 or 5 different purposes. Number one, you can have somebody who does nothing but packaging for for crops. So they'll package it up, process it, that type of thing. It's a place for farmers to bring, it's almost like a co-op, bring our stuff there, we'll consolidate it, we'll, go off and sell it somewhere. It can also be for small food production. It can be for labeling and marketing, a marketing program. And a lot of that is going on right now in the city. And you're right, a lot of it can be just organic or minimally processed foods, that type of. The other thing that I almost hate to mention it because it's a great idea. There's a lot of interest in it. There have been some big companies set up, but I think you can also do it on a smaller scale. That's indoor growing. That's controlled environmental agriculture. People think, it's got to be this huge building, really tall, but they're modular units. They're people who are doing CEA within containers, shipping containers. They just instrument them, put lights in them, and do things. They grow crops in them. So there's a lot of stuff like that.
And there are programs for that, like the high tunnel water operations through the extension service, which is something if we could line those entities up, the EDA, agriculture, the programs that exist, and then because people look at the thing with Taylor Farms. I mean, my wife stopped buying vegetables. Our grocery bill went down, but we didn't buy any kind of stuff like berries and all sorts of things because people were scared to buy anything.
Yeah,
Nobody wants explosive problems. But it does show people all of a sudden. I watched the Powhatan Farmers Market, which was they had moved it and the attendance was dropping off, and then about a month ago it exploded. People going there, and the farmers markets we've tried in this area, I don't think they're really an answer, but the process and being able to get into, being able to encourage that and leverage what we do well already. Instead of like you mentioned, necessarily depending on a method where we're trying to put different businesses in the site. What if we took advantage of what we had locally and kind of funneled through that? Because I don't think the importance on food is going to go down. If anything, in the US, it's going to go up because we're starting to outsource more of our agriculture. Now we're getting contaminated water, stuff is coming back. Screwworm. I mean, there's all sorts of people worrying about where their food's coming from. So if you can kind of get ahead of that, and then that's what we do well already.
Do you have a cooperative where you bulk your product and whatever product?
I'm completely ignorant on that. That's why I was asking. I'd still just we just mostly do production. You know, I would say the guys who grow beef here mostly sell direct, but still the bulk sell it through the auction system. So, but if we had a system, you sell it here and you have, Amelia brand beef. And I think people would snatch that up, it'd be something they know where it came from. And then when they see the stuff on the news, they're not worried about it because their beef came from, 153. Rather than coming from some other place and they're worried about what's in it and who did what.
Well, the one reason I'm interested in co-op, I think it's a great concept,
Mhm.
great in practice too. I was, in my youth, in high school, I was trying to make some money for college. And I was working as a dishwasher at Neighbor University. The president inherited, he was from Wisconsin, he inherited 3 cherry farms in Door County, which is like, here's Wisconsin, here's Door County's up here, Lake Michigan, Green Bay, it's all up there. So he hired a bunch of local kids to go up and pick cherries. And I remember going up there for summer, it was great. First of all, it was the Swedish area, traditional Swedish area, so they bring all these very young teenage waitresses over every year. It's working the pancake house, but the bottom line was this, I just remember he didn't sell his cherries direct. They had a co-op, drive the truck down, tank on the back, dump the load in there. All these farmers around were consolidating, then they were responsible for marketing and selling and doing it, and they split it, and it was just a good model. And I know there are other places that have co-ops that it's different, specific crops, and corn co-ops and that. But having a facility like I mentioned, where you bring all these disparate ones together, to process and do some other things they can't just do on their own, might be a good model for you. I'll try to send you some information on it.
Yeah, well, those up in the valley.
Yeah. And see that thing up in the valley I showed was more about, I don't think they have Fields of Gold, that's not a co-op type thing. They're mainly marketing and trying to promote the locals, the local crops individually, local farm stands, that type of type.
David, we want to thank you for coming in. I
No,
think
thank you. I hope it was.
provided a lot of information here. And I think it's good that we captured on the video, so we want to find out, go back and refresh our memory if we can do that.
Well, you got my card.
Yeah.
If you got any questions at all, reach out to me. Happy to answer. Reach out to Liz. She's the much better looking part of our partnership. So reach out to her and all the want. Happy to. And again, thank you for being a member of GAP Alliance. The best days are ahead.
Yeah. What time do you have to be in Richmond?
Our meeting's not until 4 o'clock.
And we go to lunch. All right, how about entertain a motion to adjourn? So moved.
Second.
Thank you.